Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have you here tonight for the Beacon of Light podcast. My name is April Tribe Juke, and I have a beautiful, amazing guest tonight. Her name is Katherine De Bois. Did I say that right?
De Bois,
De
technically.
Bois.
Yeah.
See, those French names, they always get me. And my name is French and Swiss and whatever. Anyway, so welcome everybody tonight. We're so excited to have her part of this incredible journey on Beacon of Light. And before we get talking to her, let's show this. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. And we are back. Thank you, everybody, for popping in here. Make sure that you let us know where you're from, what it is that you're doing, and that why you felt that tonight was a night to really, tune into this podcast. So, Katherine, share a little bit about yourself tonight.
Well, hello, April, and thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I am technically a single mum of an autistic child who just went through a rather traumatic, unusual experience. And in getting to figure out what happened to myself and getting through the other side, I managed to hopefully gain a bit of wisdom that I now try to share with other people.
Absolutely incredible. We have quite a lot of things in common. Out of my 9 children, I have 4 that are on the autism spectrum. So I understand that there are challenges, but beauty that comes along with everything. So, Katherine, thank you so much for being a part of this. And as you can see, running on the ticker underneath us, she has penned a book. She's renamed it. And the name that she has is The Girl Who Roared Quietly. Very interesting title. Can you share with us a little bit about where that came from and how that all happened?
Initially, the book was actually called What Happened to Paul Carter, who is the main character, one of the main characters in what would seem to be a fictitious book, but it's unfortunately true. Then to disempower him and to acknowledge the journey that victims, whether they're domestic violence or narcissistic abuse, I think any mourning, any long journey, hard journey, it quite often is quiet. It's so protracted, and so much of the pain is internal, and the thoughts and that silent record in your head, that when you finally come through, in my case, I felt like I was this girl who got to roar, but it was so quiet. It happened nearly anticlimactically.
Wow, incredible. Great way to describe it, because there are many times in these stories that we have that incredible power to let the world know, and at the timing it might shift and change, and silence might be what's happening. So really interesting. Share with us a little bit about this fake book that's absolutely true. Share with us a little bit about the story.
Wow. I suppose a lot of people initially start reading it and think that it's a romance novel, and they forget that I begin the book meeting a hitman. Me. I'm a normal, average person, and my life took this turn, and my fiance had paid someone to kill me. And when I found out that I was wanted in a tree shredder at a pig farm. I had a lot of questions and I wanted to understand. And in the digging and in other victims coming forward, I realised this was a huge story. And then when I published to try and stay alive, more victims came forward. And then I felt I needed to protect these victims. I needed to represent them. I couldn't curl up in a ball and give up and cry in the dark like I often wanted to, because I have the weight of hundreds of other women and families and charities sitting on my shoulders, hoping that my story and my tenaciousness will finally get the justice that everyone deserves.
Incredible. Finding that you have a price on your head
Yeah.
from somebody who, as a fiance, I'm assuming there was love there.
Yeah.
Like, what happened? How did things shift so suddenly?
So for me, it was sudden. For him, I had been a mark. I was just all of those horrible expressions in all those horrible films that I don't watch. I was a John. I was a target. I meant nothing to this man. I was just a con job. And it devastates you to realise your entire life, what you believed was true, doesn't exist. And I only experienced this for a short time. There are other people out there that have found that their partners have double lives for 20 years. I can't imagine. But for myself, it was trying to figure out how this had happened. How had I not known? How did he get away with it? Because I couldn't feel that I could heal until I understood how I had allowed this to happen to me. And it's
Very true.
hard to acknowledge the ownership of attracting a narcissist or a sociopath in this particular case.
Wow, incredible. It does take a lot of introspection to go back in and say, what was I projecting? Why would I attract all of these challenges and problems, and how could I be so used?
Mm-hmm.
There is a feeling of your worth that just diminishes.
Worthless.
And when that happens, how do you fight through it? What did you do?
The term worth is so valid. He actually would give me, he portrayed himself as a very rich man. He would give me, in this one case, a diamond necklace and said, never take it off. I always want you to know your worth to me. It was fake. So he played games the whole way through, and it's only in hindsight that you look back and you think, oh my gosh, some of those loving sentences were actual wounds that he knew he was inflicting for joy. It takes a special person to be so horrible, and I pray that most people will never meet someone like this. And statistically, sociopaths represent such a small percentage of the population. I will be very unlikely to meet another 0.05% of crazy sociopath.
That's great. Great to hear that it's so low.
So low. It shows your self-worth at the time until you remember your worth is not what is reflected from someone else. Your worth, your value is intrinsic. I know you're a very religious person, so for you, I believe that your self-worth is what is inside. And I'm spiritual, and I believe the same thing. My worth is what I am here and what I can give back. And I've tried so hard to turn this lemons story into lemonade and give back.
That's so true. In the giving, there is such a sense of redemption. There is such a sense of it's a love that really projects outwardly because if you can, like you mentioned before, the weight of the world, you felt all of these things on there to help bring things to justice. So, to give a background of the story, this particular man meets you, but his backstory doesn't start there. His backstory starts in in a whole another place. He shares with you a story that's touching, that's so
Oh,
heartbreaking, and yet they're all lies. And it
and
has something to do with the previous wife. Is that right?
there are so many dimensions to this story, which happens to be true. And you're right, yes, his backstory was untouchable. And this is one of the things that narcissists, I do want women particularly to realize the untouchable backstory. Question it. Nothing should be untouchable, but they use big untouchable backstories. And his was his ex-girlfriend had died of bone cancer. And he went into graphic detail about how he stayed with her till the end. And this proved that he was a stayer and that he was loyal. And everyone that heard this story, myself, my friends, my family, my clients, we all believed it, and it made us judge him as a beautiful human being until you realize the truth that it's actually a lie that he is utilizing because he knows that good, decent people like yourselves will never, ever question such a tragedy because it will upset them. They're using your own good against yourself.
That's very true. That is such a powerful thing because they know that wholesome and goodness, that is something that we don't question because that we have to trust. We have to trust in something good. We have to trust in something beyond, in this hope, right? There is a hook of hope when we have things like that because you can connect, you can empathize. Maybe there is even someone in the family who had something similar who has passed away from cancer and so on and so forth, and you are right there connected in.
And
And they inside laugh, mock, and they continue to just shower that as part of the the control. And I always say that there's two types of abusers. There are those that are hunters, and there are those that are caged animals. And this is very much a hunter. He knows his prey. He can seek them out, and the camouflage and the pulling in and the targeting and all of that is exactly how to lure you in, and we hook in,
mm-hmm.
and then he has us in like a cat and mouse game, plays with us until he wants the full control. And in your case, with the hitman,
Yeah.
that's pretty big.
So there was a payout coming to me. So he wanted the payout, and I was dispensable. I was disposable. Um, Obviously, in every way, I was disposable. Mm-hmm.
How did you how did you not become disposable? How did you save yourself from the hitman? He's like, what happened?
And for 6 months, I was um, harassed. Is a small word. I was threatened. I had my shop, the glass door of my shop was smashed in. The windows of my shop were smashed in. I had death threats on my phone. It was very clear that I was in danger. I was told that I was in danger by the very person who'd been paid to kill me. I stayed alive by leaving. I left Australia. I'm not clearly Australian. I left Australia. I had a wonderful friend who just came in and said, you need to leave. This is we need to discuss an exit plan. I never thought, and April, you probably use this word and you hear it more than me, women having to use the term exit plan, exit strategy out of their own life. It is one of the devastating factors. My son is in Australia. I am not. Destroyed my life. And I had to get up, and for 6 months, I hid internationally while I tried to figure out what this man had done and why. Heartbroken. And then realizing that I was this insignificant, getting smaller and smaller as if we're backing away from the universe and looking at the earth. I became this smaller and smaller and smaller piece in my own story, because I wasn't the only victim. I was one of hundreds. And that is the only reason that I then became important again, was because I was the only person who had the courage to stand up to say, he has to be stopped at whatever cost. So my life then became back. I got, the day I published the book, death threats back. I've had phone calls, death threats. I've been married in America and lost my husband. What relationship is going to survive this? It's been a long journey. This is 7 years, and this man has gone, he's going through the court systems now under numerous charges, and mine aren't there.
And how come yours are not there?
So Australia thinks that extraditing Paul from America is too expensive. And America haven't finished charging him with the crimes he's now committed in America. So they won't deport him until they have finished with that. But I am not the only female abuse victim. There is a much younger one, an alleged, I'm going to be very careful about how I word that. I state my own case. I wrote a book about it, so I'm out there. If someone wants to do defamation, they've had 7 years. But there is a young 15-year-old who is now maybe 18, who alleges a rape. Well, she alleges rape. She's alleged rape. And she too will not get justice, because the police at the time decided to believe the con man's persona over the reality.
Very, very, very damaging in lots of different ways. So now with the book.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The actual, I'm in Mexico in my holiday location, so I only have 2 books here, and the red book is heavy. It's not light reading.
Absolutely not. When you have these kinds of things that are happening, the stories are not light. These are things that are very, very important. We have our Facebook user here says, praise God, she is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many of us who have escaped with the exit plan, the strategy, the supporters. There's one thing I think we can emphasize tonight is that if anyone is trapped in any kind of abusive situation, you cannot do this by yourself. You need to build yourself a team, an exit strategy, something. Otherwise, the opportunity to be re-seized, reconnected, or for yourself to go back is just so high.
Yeah.
And I know half of the audience, that is a challenging thing to understand. But really what you need to understand is to be the support. People who need exit plans, they need different pieces of the support. You mentioned earlier that your friend reached out and was the one that said it is time to go.
Yeah.
And along the way, there are supports from strangers, from family, from friends, all coming at the right time. But you have to be the one to step forward and make the best plan that you can at the time that you understand.
You have to be prepared if we're talking this particular situation. You have to be prepared to perhaps be sleeping in a new house that has no back door in Detroit on a blow-up mattress with a sheet. That's my story. And I did it for 3 weeks. And then I've had the death threats when this book came out, and I ended up in a tent in Mexico in a campground in 90-degree heat for 6 months because I knew I wanted to stay alive. I want to stay alive because I hope to see my son. I don't think I'll ever get my own life back again, but I'd like a semblance of it. I'd like to survive, and that's what the book did. You asked me before. Running and hiding kept me alive. My friends, my support, the silent support kept me alive, and that book was a roadmap straight back if anything had happened. That's why I published it.
Wow, very, very strong and powerful. We have to make these stands. We have to roar. We have to understand that abuse and neglect and threats, any of this, it's not okay. And our permission, our own self, after these kinds of situations happen, we have to introspectively figure out it is our responsibility to heal through this.
Mm-hmm.
We have to continue to put forward. It is a very similar situation once many people, once they publish, especially if there is justice involved, jail time involved, things of that nature, when the timing happens where they get out of the prison system and are able to search you out again, the likelihood of that is huge. And so every day that we live our lives, it is like we are waving a white flag to say, yeah, we're right here, but we're still standing and we're going to continue to stand. Like Abby says, thank you for standing up and sharing this story.
The only way of stopping this behaviour, it seems that society accepts the rape of women, the murder of women. And I know that this also works in reverse for men. I understand that. But as a woman, I'm coming from that perspective. The jail time, the punishment, the entire system is flawed because we seem to permit it. We seem to blame the victim. There's victim shaming. That's why I had to change the title of the book, because I didn't want him to be looking like a hero when he has women alleging rape, let alone losing millions of dollars. People have lost millions of dollars to this man. I couldn't have him as this headline person. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. And the only way crimes can keep being committed by these people is if everyone stays silent. The amount of victims behind me, I've had a few of them contact me to say, oh, I wish someone had stood up and stopped him before he got to me. And I've said, oh, I wish you had stood up and stopped him before he got to me.
It's very true.
I know for a fact I've done as much as I can to stop him from hurting any more people.
Very good. Katherine, it's such bravery that has to come forward, and the help that people need, if anything, again, please make those exit plans, make an opportunity to stand, because it is time. And unfortunately, like you said, when those other victims rise up and say, I wish I would have known. For me, as we hid for 9 years,
that's right,
I knew other things were happening. The threats were still continuing. We had moved around the country. And finally, after I'd heard, and they go younger and younger and younger, very similar in that understanding that the last victim was 15. And that was it. I didn't go to any more justice. I went right to the press.
Yep.
I've had my books published, all of that, but I went right to the press. I went to the local press where he reside and where I was in different states. And I knew doing that, I was waving this white flag like, here I am. And
Yeah.
it is such a threat because my children are threatened still.
No.
As they keep growing older, they are still a part of this absolute mess. So it takes a lot to stand. And when I stood and said that, the victims, like you said, they come out and now have more strength. And they have said and shared their story. And for at least 3 of the past 5 years, we know he is still in prison, 2 years left.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
So we will do all the things that we can and hope that the help could be there for him. But I have to make a stand.
You
And
have
that's
to,
what you do.
you know, people like you, when I read your story, and I messaged you the other night when I was messaging you and I said you and I are very similar. I really meant that. Our stories in so many ways are so similar. And you and I have to stand up because there are so many other people who are not in a position to stand up for themselves. You just have to do it.
Yep. Very, very true. Abby, it's so true. When we unite together and forge a way as women, there is something that can really stop. So we have to stand up. We have to share these things. And I invite all of you to be a part of it as the piece that you can at the time that you can.
That's right.
Please continue to do that. Miss Emily says, we pray for you, Catherine, and I hope you get justice. I agree. Rebecca, she said, the courage here of the women, it is so strong. And we share these stories not for sensationalism, not for a focus on anything other than we need to bring things to justice, stop the behaviors, and help train up our youth to make better decisions so that this can be prevented for the future. I look constantly at my boys, my children, other children, and as they're growing up, you want them to become the best. You don't want them to fear or wonder if they're going to turn into something like this. We have to break the cycle, however it is. And that's part of this standing up, because the awareness and getting louder and louder to not allow society to just keep sweeping it under. And like you said, something really important, the acceptance of how many times a woman is killed. It's like, yeah, oh, that's too bad. As opposed to there has to have a change, and that's worldwide. I wouldn't assign that to any particular country. This is worldwide. The value of life needs to stand, and as we do this, it trickles into a lot of different avenues. So I'm so glad that you're sharing your story. I'm so glad that we have to take these chances and do it. So I know, Catherine, we're kind of coming out of time here. So I would love for you to have the last word. You have 2 minutes to just share your wisdom with the world.
The wisdom. Ironically, for a long time, I didn't feel that there was anything to learn because this was a sociopath and they don't represent normal society. However, I did learn. I learned for myself. And so I wrote those other books. I don't think you can see it, but I'm presuming that one's the I Get Depressed. I think, girls, you're allowed to get depressed over this stuff. You need skill sets to try and get through it. You do get PTSD. There's another book that's out there. I wrote a book called Addicted to Love, so women understand how we're wired to fall in love. It's actually not our fault that we fall in love. We've just got to choose better. And maybe perhaps we should start teaching girls and boys to always have a large boundary of self-love and giving love, but a tight boundary of respect for themselves, because that's how these people get us. Because we have loose boundaries and we give too much and they get in. I wish everyone stays safe. I wish everyone becomes empowered and gets the chance to be heard.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what we need. Thank you, Catherine, for taking the time and sharing this story with us. I encourage everyone to go and get her book, The Girl Who Roared Quietly. We will drop the link down here. We also had it on the blog this morning, and I
Hmm?
will reshare those things all together. Everyone says thank you, bless you. Claire has quite a bit to say. She says it takes a lot to share, but I've learned through sharing how we can find the strength in others' similar situations. And I hope you find comfort knowing that there are others in your corner. And finally, they can do something. The stronger we get in our numbers.
It's very true.
Thank you, Claire. Very, very true. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this tonight. Please go and support Catherine, share these stories, get it out there, and help to make the change.
Thank you,
We'll
April.
see. You're welcome. We'll see you, everybody. Goodbye.